alleging systematic denial of federal employment applications without cause or adequate review. The case had been dismissed on procedural grounds. Wyatt Callan was second from the bottom of the list. She asked for everything available on his service record: Army Ranger, 75th Regiment, 3 deployments between 2003 and 2013, a Purple Heart citation from 2011 IED contact, and a Silver Star, awarded 2007, Kunar Province, Eastern Afghanistan. The citation language was formal and compressed, but the facts inside it were not small. Sergeant Callan had maintained a defensive position alone for 4 hours, while the remainder of his element withdrew to safety. He had held a ridgeline under direct fire until everyone else was out. Renata sat at her desk and read that sentence 3 times. Then she looked at his employment file again. 6 years on a garbage route in Chicago. She was still sitting with it when her assistant knocked to say her 10 o'clock was waiting. That same afternoon, Owen arrived in the lobby and found Sloan already in the far chair. He sat down next to her. He had stopped announcing himself, because she had stopped needing him to, and they fell into the easy quiet that had apparently become the texture of their afternoons. It had been tentative in the first week. Now it was not. Renata, finishing a call on the 14th floor, did not know any of this was happening 3 stories below her. She was looking at the Silver Star citation on her screen. She read the phrase while the remainder of his element withdrew to safety one more time, and then she closed the tab, and she thought about a man who had held a line alone so that everyone else could get out, and who was now collecting garbage on a Chicago night route because 12 agencies had looked at his file and decided he did not have the right certification. She did not know yet what she was going to do with that thought, but she could not put it down. Preston Hale had seen them himself. He had been coming out of a late meeting on the 3rd floor, briefcase in hand, walking through the lobby toward the parking elevator when he saw his CEO standing near the service corridor entrance in a low conversation with the man who collected the building's trash. It had lasted less than 2 minutes. But Preston Hale was the kind of man who cataloged things, and he had cataloged that. He came to her office the following morning before her schedule started. Preston was 52, with the careful grooming of a man who believed appearance was argument. He had been CFO of Voss Meridian for 4 years, had survived the scandal and the restructuring that followed, and had made himself indispensable through a combination of institutional knowledge and selective loyalty that Renata had always found difficult to fully trust without being able to say exactly why. He sat across from her desk, crossed one leg over the other, and said he wanted to share a concern. He said the board had been watching closely since last year's coverage. She understood what he meant. They both did, and there was no need to name it, and that optics mattered in ways that were sometimes unfair but nonetheless real. He said he wasn't suggesting anything was wrong. He just wanted her to be careful. He said all of it with the practiced warmth of a man who is issuing a warning while ensuring nothing on record looks like one. Renata let him finish. Then she said, "Thank you, Preston," and she watched his face for the half-second before he arranged it back into concern. What she saw in that half-second was not worry, it was relief, the brief, involuntary exhale of a man who has just fired a warning shot and felt it land where he intended. She filed that away. He was not protecting the company. He was protecting something else. She didn't know what yet, but she had been running Voss Meridian for 6 years, and she knew the difference between a man who was worried and a man who was scared. Preston Hale was scared, and he had come into her office and tried to make that her problem. She did not give him the satisfaction of a visible reaction, but she did not forget what she had seen on his face. That evening she stayed in the building past 6. She told herself she was working, and she was, until she was not. From the first-floor corridor, through the glass wall that overlooked the lobby atrium, she could see Owen and Sloan in the far corner. Owen had a paperback with a dragon on the cover and was reading aloud in different voices for different characters. Sloan was listening with her knees pulled up and her chin resting on them, the posture she had when something genuinely held her. She was not performing. She was just there, absorbed, the way she used to be before everything changed. Wyatt came through the atrium once during his route. He did not stop to check on Owen. He did not linger near the children. He nodded when he passed and kept moving. He had set something in motion and then stepped entirely out of its way. Renata had spent 2 years trying to fix this, and she had been standing directly in its path the entire time. For 3 more evenings she stayed and watched. On the 4th she moved closer to the glass, where she could hear as well as see. Owen had set his book down, and they were sitting in silence, the easy, undemanding silence of 2 people who had decided they were comfortable with each other. After a while Sloane said something low, and Owen turned toward her and listened with the full, unhurried attention of a child who has not yet learned to simulate it. Renata could not make out the words. She watched Owen's face do something complicated. Later she would ask Sloane what had been said. Sloane told her she had described a girl at her old school. They had sat next to each other in reading group for most of 2nd grade, who had come up to her one morning the week after the newspaper story ran and asked, in the flat and curious voice of a child, simply repeating what she had heard at home, "Is your dad the one in the pictures?" Sloane had not answered. She had picked up her book and found a page to stare at, and from that morning she made sure to arrive just after the reading group started and leave just before it ended, so there was no open window for anyone to ask her anything. She had not spoken to that girl again. She had not spoken to any girl in that class again. Owen had listened without interrupting. Then he said, "My dad's been in the newspaper too. They called him a homeless veteran even though he has a house." He said it simply, without trying to match her hurt or outpace it, just offered it the way you offer something small that might be useful. Sloane looked at him. He shrugged. He said, "Newspapers get stuff wrong." They had sat with that for a while. Renata stood at the glass with her hand flat against the cold pane and her eyes burning. She did not go in. That night Sloane found Renata reading in the living room and sat on the arm of the couch the way she used to when she was small and wanted to be near without making a production of it. Renata held very still. She had learned this, that the wrong kind of attention could make Sloane retreat back into the careful distance she had built around herself, and that the right kind of attention was mostly not moving, not questioning, not arranging, just being in the room. After a moment Sloane said, "Mom, why don't I have any friends?" Not angry, not accusing. Asking the way a child asks when they genuinely don't know the answer and believe the adult in the room might. Renata put her book down. She had explanations: the move, the school change, the year that had overturned everything, but those were not answers to the question Sloane was actually asking, and they both would have known it. She opened her mouth and closed it, and sat in the silence of not knowing what to say to her own daughter. Through the window that overlooked the building's service corridor, she could see the faint movement of Wyatt's cart as he finished his route. He pushed it past the glass without looking up. He did not know she was watching again. The following evening, Renata was pulling into the parking garage at 5:50 when the collection truck reversed slowly out of the service bay at the far end of the 2nd level. She stopped. The truck stopped. They faced each other across the length of the garage, headlights and taillights, both waiting. The driver's window came down. Wyatt leaned out and said, "Sorry, didn't see you, I'll pull back." She had her window down too. She said, "I know." And then the truck moved forward and she eased past. 8 seconds. She drove to her parking space,